Captain Jack Miller had been in the Galactic Alliance Marines for 23 years, and he'd seen more than his fair share of combat. From the Centauri siege to the Battle of Rigel, he'd fought alongside the best soldiers in the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for the Vex invasion. The Vex were an insectoid species from the Outer Rim, standing nearly 7 feet tall with chitinous exoskeletons that could deflect standard-issue plasma rounds. They communicated through a series of clicks and hisses that Alliance translators still struggled to decipher, and they had one goal: total domination of human-controlled space. "Captain, we've got incoming." Lieutenant Tom Reed's voice crackled over the comm. "Vex dropships, at least 5 of them," Jack sighed, adjusting his battle-worn helmet. "Form up on me. Defensive positions, Protocol 7. The Marines of Alpha Squad moved with practiced efficiency, taking cover behind the twisted metal debris of what had once been a colonial outpost on Titan's moon. They'd been sent to investigate reports of Vex activity in the area, but it seemed the insects had expected them. "Sir, we're outnumbered," Private Wilson said, voice steady despite the fear Jack knew he must be feeling. The kid was only 19, fresh out of training. "Should we call for extraction?" "Negative," Jack replied. "Command needs this intel. We hold position until the data transfer is complete." The first wave of Vex warriors poured out of their dropships, their mandibles clicking in that distinctive rhythm that still haunted Jack's dreams. They moved with uncanny speed, their multiple limbs allowing them to traverse the rough terrain with ease. "Open fire," Jack commanded, and the air filled with the familiar whine of plasma rifles. 3 hours later, they were still fighting. 3 hours of constant attacks, of watching his squad slowly get picked off one by one. The data transfer was at 89%, but they were running out of time and ammunition. "Sir." It was Reed, his face streaked with dirt and blood. "Martinez is down. Took a spine through the chest." Jack cursed. Martinez had been their heavy weapons specialist. Without her, their firepower was significantly diminished. Barnes, Jack, called to their medic, who was hunched over another wounded soldier. "What's our status?" Medic Lisa Barnes looked up, her eyes hard behind her visor. She was new to the squad, transferred in after their previous medic had been killed in action last month. 4 wounded, 2 critical, and we're running low on medical supplies. Jack nodded grimly. "Do what you can. We need to hold out for another 20 minutes. As Barnes moved to check on Martinez, Jack noticed something odd. The medic pulled out a syringe filled with a bright blue liquid, something Jack had never seen before in standard medical kits. "Barnes," he called. "What is that?" She barely glanced at him. "Medical stuff, sir. Just focus on keeping those bugs off our backs." Under normal circumstances, Jack would have demanded a proper explanation. But another wave of Vex was approaching, and the wounded needed attention. He turned back to the fight, trusting his medic to do her job. Later, he would look back on this moment as the beginning of everything. The moment that would change not just his understanding of the war, but of humanity's place in the galaxy. Because Private Martinez, who had taken a poisoned Vex spine directly through his heart, was somehow back on his feet an hour later, firing his rifle with deadly accuracy as if nothing had happened. The dropship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere of Proxima Base, the Alliance's forward operating station in the Vex conflict zone. Jack stared out the view screen, watching the stars give way to swirling clouds. His mind kept returning to what he'd witnessed on Titan's moon. "Something bothering you, Captain?" Barnes asked, settling into the seat beside him. The rest of the squad was either sleeping or checking their gear, preparing for their arrival. Jack lowered his voice. "Martinez should be dead. That spine went through his chest. I've seen men die from less." Barnes's expression remained neutral. "I'm good at my job, sir." "That blue injection. I've never seen anything like it in our standard medical protocols." "With all due respect, Captain, you're not a medic." Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. "Some things are classified even from field leaders." Jack frowned. "I have clearance?" "Not for this," Barnes interrupted, then softened her tone. "Look, sir, what matters is that Martinez is alive, and we completed the mission. Isn't that enough?" Before Jack could respond, the ship's intercom crackled to life. "Attention all personnel. Prepare for landing. Medical teams, report to Bay 3 immediately upon arrival." Barnes stood, gathering her equipment. "That's me." We'll talk later, sir. But they didn't. As soon as they landed, Barnes was whisked away with the other medical personnel, and Jack was summoned to an immediate debriefing with Admiral Thompson. The Admiral's office was sparse, with only a few personal items breaking the military austerity. Thompson was a hard-faced woman with gray hair cropped short and eyes that had seen too much war. "Your report says you encountered a new type of Vex warrior," she said without preamble. Jack nodded. "Yes, ma'am. They had some kind of natural cloaking ability. We lost 3 men before we even realized they were there." "And yet your casualties were minimal," Thompson observed, studying a datapad. "Private Martinez made a remarkable recovery." Jack hesitated. "About that, ma'am. I witnessed Medic Barnes administering some kind of blue injection that's not in our standard protocols." Thompson's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Captain Miller, you've served with distinction for over 2 decades. Your record is impeccable. But there are some aspects of this war that are need to know. With all due respect, Admiral, if there's a new treatment that could save lives, it's experimental," Thompson cut him off, "and it's being tested on a limited basis. Your medic was one of the few authorized to carry it." Jack wasn't satisfied. Martinez took a direct hit to the heart. No experimental treatment should be able to fix that. Thompson sighed, leaning back in her chair. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest level, Captain. If you repeat it to anyone without clearance, you'll be court-martialed and imprisoned for treason. Do you understand?" Jack nodded, a cold feeling settling in his stomach. "We've been losing this war since the beginning," Thompson said quietly. "The Vex outnumber us, outgun us, and their technology is advancing faster than ours. But about 6 months ago, we discovered something unexpected." She tapped her datapad, and a holographic image appeared between them. A microscopic view of what looked like blue cells interacting with human DNA. "This is what's in those injections. We call it Lazarus serum. It was developed using modified Vex genetic material." Jack stared at the image, trying to process what he was hearing. "We're using alien DNA on our soldiers?" "We're using every advantage we can get," Thompson replied grimly. "And it's working, Captain. The soldiers who receive these injections heal faster, fight harder, and survive wounds that would kill anyone else." "What's the catch?" Jack asked, knowing there had to be one. Thompson's eyes met his. "We don't fully understand it yet. There are side effects, but right now survival is our priority." 3 weeks later, Jack found himself back on the front lines, this time on Epsilon 9, a small mining colony that had become a flashpoint in the war. The Vex had taken control of the main settlement, and Alpha Squad's mission was to secure a weapons cache before it fell into enemy hands. "Movement ahead," Reed whispered through the comm. "Looks like a patrol, 5 Vex warriors." Jack signaled for the squad to halt, studying the terrain through his tactical visor. They were in the outskirts of the colony, buildings half destroyed by earlier fighting. The patrol was moving methodically, checking each structure. "Barnes, Wilson with me," Jack ordered. "Reed, take Martinez and Davis around the east flank. We'll catch them in a crossfire." As they moved into position, Jack couldn't help but watch Martinez. The private moved with a fluid grace that seemed different, somehow. More precise, more confident than before. And it wasn't just Martinez. The 3 other soldiers who had received Barnes's blue injections all showed similar changes. The ambush went perfectly. The Vex patrol was eliminated without a single casualty on their side. But as they moved deeper into the settlement, Jack's unease grew. The streets were too quiet, the buildings too empty. "I don't like this," Barnes muttered, echoing his thoughts. "Where are all the colonists?" "Vex don't take prisoners," Reed reminded them grimly. But Jack wasn't so sure. Intelligence reports had indicated that the Vex had been capturing humans alive in recent months, a change in their usually genocidal tactics that had puzzled Alliance Command. They found the weapons cache in an underground bunker beneath the colony's administrative building. As Wilson worked to bypass the security protocols, Jack pulled Barnes aside. "I know about the Lazarus serum," he said quietly. "Admiral Thompson told me." Barnes's expression remained neutral, but her eyes widened. "Slightly. Then you understand why it's classified." "I understand that we're using alien DNA on our own soldiers without fully knowing the consequences," Jack replied. What aren't you telling me about the side effects? Before Barnes could answer, Wilson called out from the bunker entrance. Captain, you need to see this. Inside the bunker, beyond the weapons cache, they found something that made Jack's blood run cold. Dozens of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a human colonist. Alive but unconscious, with strange blue veins spreading across their visible skin. What the hell is this? Reed whispered, looking at the closest pod. The woman inside couldn't have been more than 30, her face peaceful despite the alien corruption spreading through her body. Barnes moved forward, running her medical scanner over one of the pods. It's the same, she said softly. The same genetic modifications as the Lazarus serum. The Vex are experimenting on humans, Jack realized aloud. But why? And how is it connected to our serum? Barnes looked at him, her expression haunted. Captain, I don't think we developed the serum from Vex DNA. I think they developed it from ours. The implications hit Jack like a physical blow. You're saying the Alliance is using a Vex bioweapon on our own soldiers? Not exactly, Barnes replied. I'm saying the line between their research and ours might be blurrier than we've been told. A sudden explosion rocked the bunker, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Reed's voice came through the comm tight with urgency. Captain, we've got company, lots of company. Jack made a quick decision. Download all the data from these pods. We're taking it back to command. And prepare charges. We're not leaving these people like this. As the squad moved to carry out his orders, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were only scratching the surface of something much darker. Whatever the Vex were doing to these colonists, whatever connection it had to the miraculous blue serum saving their soldiers' lives, he was going to find out the truth. You destroyed the pods? Admiral Thompson's voice was dangerously quiet. They were in a secure conference room at Alliance headquarters, 3 days after the mission on Epsilon 9. Jack stood at attention, his face impassive despite the tension thrumming through his body. I made a judgment call, ma'am. Those colonists were being transformed into something inhuman. Thompson's jaw tightened. Those colonists were our best lead on understanding the Vex biotech. Your judgment call set our research back by months. Research? Jack couldn't keep the incredulity from his voice. Those people were suffering. Those people were already lost, Thompson cut him off. And their sacrifice might have saved millions of others. Jack fought to maintain his composure. Admiral, with all due respect, the data we recovered suggests that the Vex aren't just experimenting randomly. They're looking for something specific in human DNA. Thompson's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Jack had spent enough time in military politics to recognize when he'd hit a nerve. The data has been received by our science division, Thompson said dismissively. You've done your part, Captain. Now I suggest you focus on preparing your squad for your next deployment. But Jack wasn't ready to let it go. Ma'am, I've seen what the Lazarus serum does to the wounded. It's not just healing them, it's changing them. Thompson stared at him for a long moment. You've been spending too much time with your medic. Barnes has always been too curious for her own good. This isn't about Barnes, Jack insisted. This is about what we're doing to our own soldiers. Martinez doesn't sleep anymore. Wilson's reflexes have improved by 30%. And Davis can anticipate Vex movements before they happen. Thompson stood, walking to the window that overlooked the sprawling Alliance military complex. We're losing this war, Captain. Or at least we were. The Lazarus program has given us the edge we desperately needed. At what cost? Jack asked quietly. Thompson turned back to face him. That's not for you to decide. It is if it affects my squad, Jack countered. I need to know what to expect from my soldiers. For a moment, Jack thought Thompson would refuse. Then she sighed, pressing a button on her desk. The room's smart glass windows darkened, and a holographic display appeared. Between them, what you're about to see is classified above your current clearance level, Thompson said. I'm showing you this because I need you to understand what we're facing. The hologram showed a laboratory where human scientists in hazmat suits worked, alongside beings that Jack recognized with a shock. They were Vex, but different, smaller, with less pronounced exoskeletons and more humanoid features. What am I looking at? Jack asked, unable to hide his confusion. The real enemy, Thompson replied. The Vex you've been fighting are just the foot soldiers. These are the architects, the true intelligence behind the invasion. And they've been studying us for longer than we've known about them. The hologram shifted to show medical imagery of human cells interacting with the blue substance Jack now recognized as the base for the Lazarus serum. They created the serum as a way to upgrade humans, Thompson continued. To prepare our biology for something. We've been reverse engineering their work, trying to use it to our advantage without triggering whatever final phase they're working toward. Jack stared at the images, a cold dread settling in his stomach. And the side effects? The changes in my soldiers? Thompson's expression was grim. Inevitable but manageable so far. The real question is where the line is. How much of the serum's potential can we unlock before we cross over into their endgame? The barracks were quiet when Jack returned, most of his squad either sleeping or on duty. He found Barnes in the med bay, inventorying supplies with meticulous precision. "How did it go with the brass?" she asked without looking up. Jack closed the door behind him. "Thompson showed me things I wasn't supposed to see." Now Barnes did look at him, her hands stilling over the medical scanner she'd been calibrating. "The architects? You knew?" Jack couldn't keep the accusation from his voice. "I had theories," Barnes admitted. "The Lazarus serum is too perfectly adapted to human physiology to be something they developed by chance. But the architects, I've only heard rumors." Jack leaned against the wall, suddenly feeling the weight of the past few weeks. "They're using us as guinea pigs, Barnes. Both sides are, and I don't know which is worse." Barnes stood, moving to a locked cabinet in the corner of the medbay. She pressed her palm against the scanner, and the cabinet hissed open. Inside were dozens of vials filled with the now familiar blue liquid. "I've been studying it," she said quietly. "Off the record, the official line is that we're using a diluted version of what the Vex developed, keeping our soldiers just human enough while giving them the edge they need to fight." "And unofficially?" Jack asked. Barnes pulled out a tablet, displaying a series of molecular structures. "The serum bonds with human DNA in a way that's too perfect to be coincidental. It's like our genetic code was designed to accept it." Jack frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet," Barnes admitted. "But I've been tracking the changes in our squad. The ones who received the serum are still evolving. Subtle changes, but they're accelerating." Jack thought of Martinez, who now moved with an almost predatory grace, and Wilson, whose reaction time in their last 3 engagements had been off the charts. "Thompson said the changes were manageable," Jack said. Barnes gave him a look that spoke volumes. "For now, but I've seen the projected models, Jack. 3 months, maybe 4, and they'll be more Vex than human." The implication hit Jack like a physical blow. Then why keep using it? Why not focus on conventional weapons, strategies? "Because we're out of time," Barnes cut him off. "The Vex have been holding back. Those foot soldiers you've been fighting, they're nothing compared to what's coming." Jack stared at her. "How do you know this?" Barnes hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve. Blue veins pulsed beneath her skin, forming intricate patterns that reminded Jack of circuit boards. "Because I was the first test subject," she said quietly. 5 years ago, before the invasion even began. I was a researcher on Proxima Base when we found the first Vex ship. It was abandoned, or so we thought. Jack took an involuntary step back. "You're still me," Barnes insisted. "Mostly, but I'm connected to them, Jack. I can sense them sometimes. Their plans, their movements. It's how I knew where to find the weapons cache on Epsilon 9. "Why are you telling me this?" Jack asked, his hand unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. Barnes smiled sadly. "Because you need to understand what we're really fighting for. It's not about territory or resources, it's about the future of humanity itself." "Meaning?" "The Vex aren't invaders," Barnes said. "They're architects of evolution. They've done this before, on 1,000 worlds. They find species with potential and guide their development." Jack's mind raced, trying to process the implications. "And the ones who don't want to be guided are eliminated," Barnes said simply. "The Alliance brass know this. The Lazarus program isn't about winning the war. It's about controlling our own evolution before the Vex do it for us." "Then why keep it secret?" Jack demanded. Why not tell everyone what we're really fighting for? Barnes gestured to her arm, the alien patterns shifting beneath her skin. Would you willingly accept this? Would any human? Jack didn't have an answer for that, because deep down, he knew the truth. Faced with extinction or transformation, humanity might choose the former out of fear and pride. The third moon of Tharsis was a desolate place, constantly battered by radiation from the gas giant it orbited. It was also home to the most important Alliance research facility in the sector, the place where the Lazarus serum had been perfected. Jack's squad had been deployed as additional security following reports of increased Vex activity in the system. But Jack suspected their real purpose was to keep him and Barnes where Thompson could monitor them. Status report, Jack said, walking through the research level's main corridor. The walls were lined with laboratories, each dedicated to a different aspect of the Lazarus program. Reed fell into step beside him. All quiet on the perimeter. Martinez and Davis are running drills with the facility's security team. Wilson is helping the tech division upgrade their defensive systems. Jack nodded, noting how Reed tactfully avoided mentioning that all three soldiers were showing increasingly advanced signs of the serum's influence. Martinez's skin had developed a subtle pattern of scales around his neck. Davis occasionally spoke in the clicking language of the Vex without realizing it. And Wilson had started having visions. And Barnes? Jack asked. In Lab 7 with the head researcher, Reed replied. Dr. Hoffman has been picking her brain about the serum's long-term effects. Jack frowned. Barnes had been spending more and more time with the science team, less with the squad. It made tactical sense. Her unique condition made her invaluable to the research. But it left Jack feeling increasingly isolated as his soldiers transformed before his eyes. I'll check in with her, Jack decided. Keep monitoring the perimeter. Something doesn't feel right about this place. Lab 7 was at the end of the corridor, its doors sealed with both electronic and physical locks. Jack's clearance got him through the first layer of security, but a stern-faced guard stopped him at the inner door. Captain Miller, the guard nodded. Do you have an appointment with Dr. Hoffman? I'm here to see my medic, Jack replied evenly. The guard hesitated, then spoke into his comm. After a moment he nodded and stepped aside. They're expecting you. The laboratory beyond was cavernous, filled with equipment Jack didn't recognize. At the center was a massive cylindrical tank filled with the blue liquid of the Lazarus serum, but in a more concentrated form than Jack had ever seen. The fluid pulsed with its own light, casting eerie shadows across the room. Dr. Hoffman was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual frown. He barely acknowledged Jack's presence, focused instead on the data scrolling across his tablet. Barnes was standing near the tank, her hand pressed against the glass, eyes closed, as if in communion with the substance inside. What's happening here? Jack asked, his voice echoing in the vast space. Hoffman glanced up, irritation flashing across his features. Captain, your medic is helping us understand the final phase of the serum's development. Final phase? Jack moved closer to Barnes. She hadn't reacted to his arrival, still seemingly entranced by the tank. The Vex aren't subtle, Hoffman explained, his scientific detachment at odds with the enormity of what he was describing. Their genetic engineering leaves markers, instructions for the next stage of development. And what is the next stage? Jack asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Synthesis, Barnes said, finally opening her eyes and turning to face him. The blue veins on her arms had spread, now visible at the edges of her face. The becoming. Hoffman nodded. Crude, but accurate. The serum prepares human biology for complete integration with Vex physiology. A hybrid species, taking the best aspects of both. Jack felt a cold anger building inside him. And the Alliance is just going along with this, helping the Vex transform us? You misunderstand, Hoffman said, setting down his tablet. We're not helping them. We're beating them at their own game. The architects have been doing this for millennia, finding species with potential, guiding their evolution through manufactured conflicts, and then stepping in to save them with their biotech. But this time, Barnes continued, we found their playbook, the abandoned ship I told you about. It contained records of their previous projects, enough for us to understand their methods and subvert them. The Lazarus serum is our creation, Hoffman added. Based on their science, yes, but tailored to our needs. We're controlling our own evolution before they can impose theirs. Jack looked between them, trying to reconcile what he was hearing with what he'd seen on the battlefield. And the soldiers? My squad? They're what? Prototypes? Pioneers, Barnes corrected him. The first of what humanity will become. Strong enough to fight the Vex on equal terms. Adaptable enough to survive. What's coming? What's coming? Jack demanded. Hoffman and Barnes exchanged glances. The architects are losing patience, Hoffman finally said. The foot soldiers were just the first wave. They've been testing our defenses, studying our responses. The real invasion is about to begin. The alarm klaxons began wailing at 300 hours, jolting Jack from a restless sleep. He was moving before consciousness fully returned, muscle memory taking over as he grabbed his weapons and armor. Status report, he barked into his comm as he rushed into the corridor. Reed's voice came through, tense but controlled. Multiple Vex vessels entering the atmosphere, sir. Bigger than anything we've seen before. Defensive positions, Jack ordered. All squad members report to the central hub. By the time Jack reached the command center, the situation was already dire. The holographic display showed 5 massive Vex ships descending toward the research facility, each at least 10 times the size of their normal vessels. They found us, Dr. Hoffman said, his usually detached demeanor cracking. Somehow they found out what we're doing here. Barnes stood by the window, watching the approaching ships with an expression Jack couldn't read. Not somehow, she said quietly. They always knew. They were waiting for us to reach this point. What point? Jack demanded, grabbing her shoulder and turning her to face him. Critical mass, Hoffman answered instead. Enough humans altered by the serum to ensure species survival. Jack looked around the command center, at the faces of the researchers and soldiers, many of whom now showed subtle signs of the serum's influence. This was never about winning the war. There was never going to be a victory through conventional means, Barnes said. The architects have had millions of years to perfect their methods, but there can be survival, adaptation. Outside, the first of the Vex ships was now directly overhead, its massive hull blocking out the stars. Unlike the utilitarian craft of the foot soldiers, this vessel was almost organic in appearance, with flowing lines and pulsing lights. The arch ships, Barnes whispered, a hint of awe in her voice. They only come when the transformation is ready. To begin, Jack felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. This facility is a beacon. You've been calling them here. Not calling, Hoffman corrected. Challenging. Showing them that we won't be passive subjects in their experiments. The facility shuddered as the first impacts hit the outer defenses. Jack's squad reported in one by one. Reed from the northern barricade, Wilson from the communications center, Martinez and Davis from the hangars. What's the plan? Jack asked, looking between Barnes and Hoffman. Surely all this research wasn't just to roll over and surrender. The plan, Barnes said, moving to a console and entering a complex series of commands, is to show them that humanity chooses its own path. The central tank of Lazarus serum in Lab 7 began to glow more intensely, the blue light pulsing in a rhythmic pattern that matched the lights on the arch ships above. We're sending them a message, Hoffman explained, in their own language, that we've taken their gift and made it our own, that we won't fight them. We'll join them, but on our terms. Jack stared at him incredulously. You're negotiating? With aliens that have killed millions of our people? We're surviving, Barnes replied simply. Evolution isn't pretty, Jack. It's brutal and efficient. The Vex didn't start this war to conquer us. They started it to force us to adapt or die. It's what they do. Another impact rocked the facility, stronger this time. The lights flickered, and emergency power kicked in. Sir! Reed's voice came through the comm. They've breached the outer perimeter, but they're not attacking. They're just walking in. Jack rushed to the security feeds. What he saw defied everything he knew about Vex tactics. The creatures moving through the breach weren't the warrior caste he'd fought for years. They were the architects, just as Thompson had shown him. Smaller, more refined, moving with an almost ceremonial purpose. They're here for the serum, Jack realized aloud. No, Barnes corrected him. They're here for us, for what we've become. The door to the command center slid open, and Martinez and Davis entered. But they weren't alone. Between them walked an architect, its multifaceted eyes taking in the room with inhuman intelligence. Jack raised his weapon instinctively, but Barnes placed a hand on his arm. "It's over, Jack," she said softly. "The war, the fighting, all of it. This is what we've been working toward." The architect approached them, its movements fluid and precise. It raised a limb, revealing a device that projected a holographic image into the center of the room. A double helix of human DNA intertwined with the alien blue patterns of the Vex genetic code. "Synthesis," Hoffman breathed, staring at the image. "They're showing us the end result." The architect made a series of clicks and hisses. To Jack's shock, he realized he could almost understand it, not with his ears, but with something deeper, something the Lazarus serum had awakened in him without his knowledge. "What is it saying?" he asked, though part of him already knew. "That we have proven ourselves worthy," Barnes translated. "That we have shown the intelligence and adaptability they seek in their partners." "Partners," Jack repeated incredulously. "After everything they've done?" "War is their test," Barnes explained. "It always has been. They believe that only species who can adapt their biotech and use it to fight back are worthy of joining their collective." The architect gestured toward the window, where the massive ships now hung in formation above the facility. One by one, they began to pulse with light, sending beams down to the surface. "What are they doing?" Jack demanded. "Calling to the serum," Hoffman said, watching with fascination. "Everyone who's received it will feel the pull, the choice to complete the transformation." Jack looked at Barnes, at the blue patterns now, clearly visible beneath her skin. "And if we refuse?" "They leave," she said simply. "And we face what comes next alone." "What comes next?" "The galaxy is larger and more dangerous than humanity knows," Barnes said gravely. "The Vex have survived for millions of years because they adapt, incorporate, evolve. They offer the same to us." Jack thought of the countless battles, the soldiers lost, the colonies destroyed. At what cost? "Change," Barnes replied. "We won't be entirely human anymore, but we'll survive." All around them, the facility hummed with energy as the Vex ships continued their call. Jack could feel it himself now, a pull, a whisper in his blood where the Lazarus serum had entered his system during emergency battlefield treatment months ago. "That's why field leaders stopped questioning medics about their injections," Jack said with sudden understanding. "This was the plan all along." Barnes nodded. "The Alliance knew what was coming. They've been preparing us for this moment for years. The only question now is whether we accept it." Outside, the transformation had already begun. Humans and Vex stood together, bathed in blue light, their forms beginning to merge in ways that defied conventional biology. Not monsters, not warriors, but something new. Something with the potential to be greater than either species alone. Jack looked at his squad, at the people he'd fought beside for years. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. In their eyes, he saw not fear but certainty. They had already chosen their path. "Evolution isn't pretty," Jack repeated Barnes's words, "but it's necessary." He stepped forward, toward the architect and the future it represented. A future humanity hadn't asked for, but one it might need to survive in a universe far more complex and dangerous than they had ever imagined. And at that moment, Jack understood why field leaders had stopped questioning medics about their injections. Some changes couldn't be fought, they could only be embraced.